Fellow Americans, there are a whole bunch of and people of the rest of the world, the human species body, and people from Saudi Arabia. This breaching method, there was a human fact-checking nature breaching method since before religious messengers were born. Already had roles from off campuses changing what nature communicates. We have been using systems tactical ulterior from the one that shows us revelations, is communicating, showing us answers with why and how, and questions, giving us questions too with why and how we have black people's whites of eyes, why and how we are an individual species body of a whole bunch of individual bodies, why there are totally different individual species bodies, each one made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies, so we can discern the individual identity of value progression that led to ancients and pantheism and the republic for which America stands and its constitution, which Americans still stand for, abridged as a certain type of victim slash hyper victim per hyperforeign at countries A through Z. This breaching method measures any grouping of countries tries to counter what this breaching method maintains, while still as locations, areas, and states are the voices that can only operate countries. Then they put an individual to be a leader. Locations, areas, and states are already all natures of calmness or aggression as collusion slash S with the same definition of prediction. I'm not a doctor, a dictionary definition of criminally foreign influence, tactically of my lawyer, to tactically delusions wrought, though. Two, originally and still, they have replaced what our founders communicated. I'm one of the people that WFSB, Connecticut CBS, attached to fake conversations with themselves and with others. They're after the World Trade Center attack, which instantly recorded and confessed and demonstrated, confirmed they have collusions intercities and interstates and internationally with their sources, involved with them with predicate acts, with facts methods, and families and the difference of the people tied to them is manifest that way because there's even worse involved. Like, in other words, with people involved with police phones and phone companies, as ones increasingly involved with fake transcripts, fake phone transcripts, as ones that are all tied to the same house / S with extended family members, timed collusions with Wethersfield police with Saudi Arabia, as the ones in Connecticut and other police departments with the same house / S increasingly with them, and a whole bunch of people enter and intrust cities with them, planting evidences. Collusion / S with what goes with this, including next to the World Trade Center the day of the attack, the morning of right before the attack, and the night before it, and long term before it, with the same ones, interstates, timed collusion. I never had a word of conversation with a Claudia Scalora. She's one of the ones that was outside my hotel room, right when I was walking out the door. One of the ones increasingly people tied to former director of the F.B.I, Robert Lusk, and his family members and their co-defendants, with people tied to a Scalora, also who have connections between names next to campuses I went. Like a campus I went 1 year on Valley Crest Street in Wethersfield when I was in kindergarten, and then the school closed. It became a elderly home or whatever, and that's involved with like a Demoro family, and there's a Schedule family, and others with Middletown locations through time. And Whiting forensics is increasingly tied to child abusers, leaders, and kids, years apart, first forced, and then and now more involved with it. And when people try to speak about it, about the past, see, it came up on Facebook, has people like that were never even classes together, who have been acting with the director and getting away with it because people from off the campuses, also with all these other countries, have been collusion / S. So no one follows mandated law properly. And the interbranch had their kids' collusions with that. All exceptions, exception nature too. They try to use the truth for lies. they show that it comes with demonstrations /s of the same thing. Also, these are people of roles with all kinds of criminally foreign influence natures of private criminal enterprises. That, like, for example, Russians and Americans, and people with a Fred Grisey, and people associated with a Ukraine flag, increasingly involved with people from Hartford Hospital, have people from Russia and Ukraine involved with them, with a Colonial house near me, and people named Smith, involved with a whole bunch of people with wire crimes with the Wethersfield Police Department. And they pretended they had conversations with me and that I went there as a kid and now as an adult. And they have multiple police departments with those same houses. And the Colonial house, one of them said that they have a cousin named Scalora. And also a Robert Rodriguez was planting evidences with them on my street from other areas and rolls with confessions about untimely deaths, rolls. And one that was the same time connected, and people with my neighbors that used to be in the house next to me. Also tied to at Trinity College, there was an untimely death. Even if that was made up, they put faked and changed communications between me and others. And I didn't write any letter. There are proofs too that they have handwriting experts that they try to make people write and planting evidences. The FBI has all kinds of ways, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought, and with other agencies. A bunch of people with the CIA and other agencies and courts and their family members. There are proofs are multiple branches at once, but they have a whole bunch of different countries, not just Russia and Ukraine. But these are also houses next to the campuses involved with medical and sexual offenders of kids. Fred Grisey, I didn't even know who he was. He sought me out to make confessions. Also with the John Maiano, years after other people made confessions. People had conversations with a modern pastry, increasingly involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, with the people involved with recorded roles, with child abusers, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, involved with the syntax and the syntax nature of adults and kids, where and how they are shown needs and means to hide things past, active, and preemptively. They are recorded preemptively at the same time with other countries. Forgiveness is because the differences of guilt with the collusions, even with black pupils, white survivors. Had there not been mass differences of guilt, collusion /s, someone would be able to use free speech and use this as the hyper-evidential to peer right through what they call research. The research campuses, all ages and natures of campuses. They are great, and they are good and bad, tactical terror, then we're allowed to appreciate. Because there is also, in other words, nature shows us, but in other words, they want to pretend things are debatable, and they're leaving out and changing the predicate acts and making self-valued roles. The FBI and other agencies, people associated with a Kelly Kismerick, and why and how I know how to pronounce her name like that. Involved also with educators I had, who are good people, were influenced to, in other words, they just repeat fake things in backgrounds. There are also, these are family members with how they, different agencies and courts have roles with the families that are security with the campuses. They have roles of all kinds of natures of organized crimes and organized crimes and methods, the same way they did originally, relative to why and to how, for example, next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, why and how people could be motivated by the breaching method, originally instilled to have other communicated for those places and for the place of America and of humanity and for our founders themselves. The only one we know the name of, besides any of the Native Americans living at the time, the only colonists who became a founder, and the one who everyone used the plan of, James Madison. He still didn't have free speech once he was then a president/chief too. They had to counter-extort everyone, even George Washington. You guys won't even allow his syntax regarding his extortion to be treated honestly. You won't even allow what nature communicates to be appreciated honestly. You don't have at countries A through Z. Not one of those names had possession of that name. Please get me off the fake conversations and impositions of the organized crimes, plural, of Connecticut's Channel 3 News and of the other networks and the journalists involved. FBI Director Rob Beluskin has a bunch of people in there, educators. There are journalists tied to a Jack Heitner, who's one of the ones increasingly involved with Wethersfield Police and people that worked with the Wethersfield Police Department through time, involved with predicate acts, false fake transcripts, and organized crimes at and between and next to campuses, intercities, and intra-cities connected. There's a Detective Samuda, who years before it, I never had a conversation with him. I saw him from like a distance, he's reportedly the person who was calling in sexual things to a girl who worked at one of the girls who worked at a business office, who's increasingly tied to people from Wethersfield. That's in New Britain, Connecticut, with people from other states and other cities who are increasingly involved with people from Wethersfield at the borders of towns, involved acting so others can film fake things, and where they have roles with uses of the right to lie, which is a phrase of James Comey. Before and after James Comey, I saw them with that phrase. He is already involved with wire crime acts and methods, mail crime acts and methods. Interbranch are recorded seeking me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. Never to communicate with the police because they just faked communications anyway with me as a kid. Now as an adult, their roles with identity theft, wrought, slanders. And when I was a kid, and the kids who did go and speak with them, they gave affidavits. And they know it was recorded too, other ways. They forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded them to pretend fake things in databases, change what they said, put fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. Increasingly, a Tiger Cubs and people involved with the Cub Scouts sought me out. Didn't say anything when I was there in person. Then sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate from their roles of wire crime acts and methods and motive screening and planting. Has something to do with his roles, a Detective Samuda, with the FBI director and his co-defendants and their family members too, with the business office of Central Connecticut State University, and with some judges, female judges involved with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, and with co-defendants and their family members of Robert Luskin before and after the World Trade Center attack. Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College also has a bunch of people tied to people named, and as people named Demoro and Violet, and who have been planting evidences on my street, including with intelligence families that have long been gone. And then they try to do a sequence shift too with a Tim O'Brien. I never had a conversation with him at a corner of a street on Highcrest Street. They've been planting evidences and trying to make a fake instance there tied to their confessions about that years later that made no sense. Increasingly, there are people with modern pastry that have roles with a Mayano family and a Kalal family, that medical families recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed, involved with them with judges, prosecutors, victims, advocates with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and proven child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, first forced, and more recorded then and now involved. These are also people increasingly involved with Facebook, all sides of criminal and civil cases in America and across the globe. See, A through Z have been speaking about economics. Thank God we have a president who's trying to use tariffs with love, too. In other words, to say, they won't allow leaders to say it, but what they're all trying to say, thank God, too, President Obama tried. And I don't know what it was with President Biden, but they're lying to all of them. And they have these things unfolding with the technology, and they're pretending, oh, well, they know about it, so we'll ask them. It shuts their mouth. You don't have to know about it to know that's a problem that they don't know how to speak about. In other words, they're using sciences and the names of the people of sciences only having been known abridged from off the locations, hyper additional collusions. Then a breaching method hides behind that. And in the future, it's going to keep people needing to hide the same finite sequence and self-value, things that no one would self-value otherwise. And for motivations that appear to be for the real ones, propagated that way, self-cultivated. In other words, so mandated laws offensively forbidden and being forbidden by predicate acts methods, wire crime methods. I am not a lawyer. Former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants and their family members like a Thaddeus Grabowski before a 2006 district court case. He's also collusions with a bunch of people next to Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut, and with the state capitol. And a bunch of people at Hartford Hospital have been putting kids that don't even see each other on campuses, don't even know each other, but they're in the same grade, they have different teachers. They're involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and fake motivations planting, trying to make fake instances. And they're involved with behavior rackets, and they're changing and faking, and with collusions changing and faking what people say. Pretend, oh, they're saying that because of that. That's their motivation. They brought their names in. And they're putting increasingly, in other words, all kinds of wire and mail crimes and federal evidences crimes and crime methods with the intelligence families and how they are with triages and unmarked police forms. So F.B.I. director and others pretending they care about their safety. If you care about your safety, follow mandated law. Otherwise, we're going to go deeper and deeper into the people associated with the corner of Church Street, with WTNH, FBI, and people all along Route 175 in the corners on that street, as people from other areas who've been planting evidences on my street, with people who also did it were at places I live temporary, and as ones that have time collusions with World Trade Center predicate acts. I'm not speaking about theory. Get me off the fake conversations about the World Trade Center attack with Channel 3 News, so I can get the names of the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones onto paper with the interbranch, because they have time collusions, names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, the news, names next to body dumping spots, their prisons. They all had collusions too, forcing a principal child abuser with and as ones who have roles with ones years before that. In other words, everyone speaks through others like big fake punks, and you're pretending other. In other words, follow mandated law properly and with love, and don't. In other words, who disbelieves, please TMZ. So Facebook has roles too, to an extent of knowledge that's at least plausible. That former director of the F.B.I., Robert Luskin, and other foreign and domestic roles with syntax online, they were shown needs to use that to hide their collusion /S with the breaching methods uses of databases, use/S of databases. For example, per NASDAQ method, they even had roles with slavery and replacing what black people as white survivors communicates, when it's not nature only as criminal and citizeness nature, which nature itself shows us. And who denies that will have an inherent to, active to, progressive to Their logic, their nature, logic, demonstration / S of the same. But forgiveness is because there are use / S of that recorded too, for example. So even when they get things right and were wrong, the difference of that was also when they defend and value that. In other words, the names of the people of sciences are simultaneously abused while since they were kids. And each age and nature of difference, including the ages, their strengths and their weakness, the breaching method measures and maintains a whole bunch of identities, suits, and ties, counters, exceptions, a whole bunch of jobs and titles. Oh, it's my job. That's why we need mandated law followed out here, let alone online where we can force equality of fact treatment unlike anything else. Boxing. But makes us shush to hear what makes no sound. But it is all things, well not, but anyway. It's why and how it is totally, it is not our species body. It is not the other species bodies, made up each of them of a whole bunch of individual bodies, because it's all things anyway. And it is further a quality of diffusion that is further positive onto its system here, or our value as its system, as an identity of forever nature, making more and more of its identity a value progression, its body a value progression, forced away from here, as Earth's a special difference, as force, space, nature transfer, as Leith of Hades, Lethe, as more probably pantheism had been about this science that nature shows us it is functional, how its identity of value progression is hyper invisible but still discernible distinctly from how it is the invisible but still discernible parts of speech, for example. Therefore, of the parts of speech of English that were revealed by the ancients, that revealed pantheism and exceptions working together, being led by how nature shows us it is functional, how it is hyper invisible distinctly from how it is invisible but still discernible. And I should put a / between that, because that's three distinct, hyper invisible but still discernible identities of relationship to itself, where the rest of its complete nature comes with the extent of its individual identity of value progression. We are shown means to hypercorrelate this way. Many boxings, but also now because of reasons forced by a hyperforeign breaching method, a human fact treatment nature predicate acts with facts delivery system method. Were we not directed to see the whites of eyes in a context where no one had free speech and everyone had to pretend other to an extent? Otherwise, that body was sensed. So mandated law, mandated other, then they were shown that they were backed into a trap. Everyone speaking through others has little magic tricks involved. There are mass fake transcripts already on Facebook. The agencies and the interbranch made confessions to the breaching method into our own citizens. This breaching method had the people operating the names of countries A through Z, not even realizing if force checked and persuaded them to blame other things, others, or selves for things that it caused. And then it made the people counter that, also blaming it wrongly, and then defending it, correctly relative to how they were wrongly attacked, but leaving out increasingly the breaching method's roles with it. Increasingly, they do that. And then they put fake instances too, put fake phone transcripts and ties between kids. A whole bunch of people I never tried to contact, tried to planted evidences that's recorded. And there were also time collusions next to the World Trade Center towers. in the World Trade Center attack context, as ones also with WFSB, recorded predicate acts, World Trade Center predicate acts after it, that to hide it. And so the interbranch are recorded threatening me and torturing me and extorting me and stealing my identity to force me not to speak about things and about how they already faked and stole my identity and have all kinds of organized crimes, collusions, and with uses of differences that show, like whether they're playing, they're speaking about differences. When they make subject treatments, topic treatments, those are criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, wrought, and they have self-valued roles, countries individually grouped and together. It is from off all the campuses, though, a hyper-additional collusion that has never stopped being hyper-additional from those locations. But we have to understand where and how and why. Nature will not stop generating negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. We can't go opposite. We have, in other words, we have to just follow mandated law. So they don't have. Then there are lawsuits and things like that. But you just follow mandated law, and I'll show you how we could get through that. Because Judge Napolitano, his Sense and Sensibilities before and after he was with Fox Connecticut News, it was played by people with Hartford, Connecticut, involved intercities and intra-cities and next to campuses, including fire and medical campuses. Increasingly, there are collusions with that. So people are very, everyone will tell you, like the only people who are allowed to speak, say, oh, but nobody cares. In other words, then you speak from mandated law anyway. So you guys are still speaking about the World Trade Center attack. Your self-valuing roles in recording and confessing while you're pretending other, about how you change your fake, what people said. They fake ties to the people that were in the morning before the World Trade Center attack involved with it. Increasingly, your guys are making confessions to me about this while you're pretending other. You were directed to hide those kind of things. You're not hiding it. Former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants and their family members have a whole bunch of people with the town lines like West Hartford and New Britain, involved also with the corner of the street at Rocky Hill and Route 3, and conjunctions to it and that, like the state judicial branch officers, but also with people intercities. There are men and women with the name Bobby involved with East Hartford intelligence, also with a former Governor Malloy with intelligence. It's nothing, but I don't even know former Governor Malloy, but he had roles of the proven child abuser principal first force. And there are more judges, including female judges, involved with people with CRT in East Hartford and businesses and houses next to it, including where they make planes. These are also people tied to Christopher Cullen, who have been fabricating police reports with the New Britain Superior Courts, judges, prosecutors, their family members, victims advocates involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, a whole bunch of people from other areas that have been direct and indirect roles, planting evidences on my street, years apart with different people, just fake incidents. In other words, they have the fire departments involved, intercities too. A whole bunch of different countries involved with their family members running into high live regression. They're recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirmed. They're putting fake transcripts at Harvard Hospital. They have an institute living on their campus, which is like it was founded in 1822 with slavery still entrenched in northern colonies, southern colonies. It's like the diaspora for where they have people speaking on mental health. Recorded criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, wrought wire crime, mail crime methods. There are lawyers that graduated from UConn and doctors from UConn and their patients who are planting evidences and fake motivations. And, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, even if they're unmarked police forms pretending to be patients, where they force mental evaluations They also lie about what happens before things. 2 times they totally made things up to force child abusers with Hartford Hospital, involved with some sexual medical offenders of kids, also with a little girl in their family, little boys and girls in their family. They have generations, like 3 generations of a Leahy family with Hartford Hospital, also with generations of a Lombardo family. I've never seen on my street. They're increasingly with their educators, with educators associated with them, and Wethersfield police chiefs retired with the same house /S with a whole bunch of people with them, planting evidences of identity theft, fraud, slanders on my street, and at corners of streets in their confessions relative. And one of them has extended family member who was outside my hotel room right next to the World Trade Center towers the night before it, which has a whole bunch of roles with them, with a whole bunch of natures of organized crimes and relative identity theft, fraud, slanders instances. The World Trade Center and other countries' equivalents, they have it's relative where and how they have replaced what our founders communicated about why and how we need to entertain criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, wrought, private criminal enterprises, entrenched time collusions with the difference of their guilt uses or the overt criminal enterprises, the terrorists at the time, and still only capable of being manifest. In the 3 branches of government, and really why and how there's a witch trials place next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, and even hyper evidentially further recorded, is why and how really then and now they still have other communicated for that place and for our founders than they communicated for themselves, and then for the presidents /chiefs, let alone for everyone else. Even our presidents /chiefs didn't have free speech, and they had to pretend other to an extent. Otherwise, they were sent, and that was hurt. Imagine that. Please fix the fake evidence.